It's all right, everyone. Welcome to another episode 355 of Stu and the Nun. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in here on this Thursday evening. And as you can see, we are doubling it up tonight with two guests. And so excited, man. We try to keep it current and topical. And as you know, in our political seasons here, we really can wait till Thursday to know what we're going to talk about, because the news changes sometimes by the hour, if not by the day. And tonight, I'm very, very, Toby can't make it tonight. So I've got the pleasure of welcoming on two esteemed gentlemen, Mr. Dan Backer and Shaun McCutcheon. I hope I said that right, Shaun. You correct me if I didn't, but both
yes,
from...
sir, Shaun McCutcheon.
All right, Shaun McCutcheon, both from the Coolidge-Reagan Foundation. And we're going to talk about that and what that's about. And they're joining us tonight to talk about some things happen in the news. Gentlemen, welcome, and thank you for coming on Stu and the Nun.
Thanks for having us.
Awesome. Thank you. Hey, so we'll start. I'll start with you, Shaun, because you got the tie on. So you get to kind of give our listeners, viewers, a little bit of background of who you are and what you do.
Well, I'm an engineer from Alabama, but you probably don't remember me from that. You probably remember me from campaign finance, McCutcheon v. FEC, a Supreme Court case over 10 years ago that basically changed campaign finance in terms of hard money contributions to federal campaigns. And I was, or still am, a political activist, on the right, I guess you would say, conservative side.
There you go. Are you an engineer? Still doing engineer stuff?
Oh, definitely. Yes, sir.
All right. Awesome. And Dan, what about you?
Well, I'm a campaign finance and political lawyer. Originally trained in working in Virginia, Washington, D.C., and last 4 years down in Florida. And I had the privilege of meeting Shaun and helping him bring his case to the Supreme Court and ultimately win. And since then, yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Keep going.
And since then, Shaun and I have worked together on the Coolidge-Reagan Foundation. He's our chairman. And we have used this platform to go out and challenge campaign finance laws and really try to drive accountability for bad actors, whether it's AOC or Ilhan Omar or Cori Bush. I've had the good fortune of working with Shaun and others to try to drive accountability in the political class.
Okay. All right. So that's, pretty much the group we're going to talk. Both of you are involved quite a bit of things, different organizations, I know. Dan, were you the one that argued in front of the Supreme Court?
No, I was not. We actually had Chief Justice Roberts, former clerk, Erin Murphy, who was a rock star. We got lucky. We got her. She argued the case for Shaun, and she did an amazing job for it. So we were very lucky to have had her.
I was going to say, man, I know that's a big deal to be able to argue in front of the Supreme Court. And I was like, wow, man, you're definitely a powerhouse if you just went like, I got
Well, Ronald Reagan said it's amazing what you can accomplish when you don't care about the credit. And so I'm much happier having, great people working with us to win, because, we're not in it for ourselves. We're in it for the win and for the future.
Yeah. Well, someone like that worked for one of the Chief Justice, probably knows some of the ins and outs and that kind of stuff. So that's awesome though. But that's pretty amazing on that case. So definitely going to get back and talk about that for a second. But Shaun, I'd like you to maybe cover a little bit of kind of you're the chairman of the Coolidge Reagan Foundation. Kind of what is the purpose behind it? Why'd you start it? What does it do?
Well, we started it way back. At the time of this case, we were working on numerous projects, and we needed a First Amendment foundation. It's mainly about the First Amendment, and it's named after two of my favorite presidents, really like Calvin Coolidge. And it's about, again, freedom, it's freedom oriented and free speech, and especially when it relates to political speech. Because we kind of got, a lot of fame on that subject. So we needed a foundation to manage other projects and continue to spread our message and also organize for additional activities.
So was it, have you found, I'm trying to think how I say this. Was this done partially because of just the biasness we see from judges in lower courts and district courts and things like that, were just making crazy rulings, or people were making decisions and no one was challenging them? Is that kind of
it would be more in category? You're talking about Coolidge Reagan in general.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It was about challenging a lot of the rules and regulations that prevent political activity and challengers. Back in the early 2000s, my primary activism subject was, how do we bring challengers into the House, get more a change in leadership is what, in terms of the House is where we started. Now we ended up doing a lot of presidential politics and maybe a little Senate here and there, but it was about, we need better leadership because of the decline over then it was the last 40 years and now it's the last 50 plus. Yeah. Everybody's been talking about it for a long time, and it's like, why is this happening? And, you saw grassroots organizations with the Tea Party, and we were just trying to find ways to get our message out, organize voting, protect, free and fair elections, for example, legal and ethical violations, and accountability is a big one, holding public officials accountable, because you have a 92% incumbency rate. As you probably know, it's very hard for incumbents to lose or be removed from office. It's almost impossible. Yeah. I mean, we saw it happen to Liz Cheney recently, but it's very rare.
Yeah, especially if they're if they're in a state that is so slanted one way or another, right? I always say, Satan himself could have moved to New York like Hillary did and still won and became a senator, because New York's going to vote. I'm out of the Western New York, Buffalo area, and I mean, and sadly I live here. I'm not from here, but I mean, it's the way you see it. I mean, the state's completely skewed one way when it comes to the.
Yeah, it's not just the states and the districts, though. I mean, keep in mind that the campaign finance laws, for example, are often designed to make it difficult for, anybody other than the entrenched incumbent to raise any funds or make any real challenge. Because, as you know, a large part of the money in elections is institutional money. So. And before the aggregate limits were struck, most of your, donors would be what we call maxed out or limited. And it was, to us, it was a big problem back then, especially in terms of some of the objectives on the presidential level, especially because if you went back to, say, 2012 and you looked at Romney's election, I know that's painful, but they had a month of time where they had lack of funds and lack of money. So there was like a lot of objectives that were put out, and one of them was, how do we improve fundraising? So
Right. So,
not just messaging. Back then it was messaging was probably number one. How do we message better? And that's changed a lot. It's been up and down, actually. It went up and then down when we were all canceled, and now we're back again with the new media like yourself. So
yeah. So real quick, after we go to Dan, but you said something I want to come back to. So, I mean, in 2012, obviously we had social media, we had internet, we had blogs, all that kind of stuff. Those things have now multiplied. I mean, we just, the amount of, I would think back then we thought, man, how much more stuff can be shoved at us through the cyberspace into our faces, which it is definitely multiplied now with the TikTok and Snapchat and Instagram has taken off much more. Have you found, in looking back, do you think it was, is it harder now, or is it easier now to control some of that messaging and narrative because it's kind of channeled in just a few of the big players, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok? If you kind of control the messaging there, and X, do you have a good chunk of it and don't have to worry about all the others? Would you say? Either one of you guys.
I think it depends who you're trying to talk to. Obviously my kids, like, they live on, I should have given them phones, but they live on TikTok. They barely understand X. They're a little older. They get into Insta, and they're into Snapchat. This is how they're digital natives, and that's how they communicate. You're not getting my mom that way. You're not getting my dad that way. You're sure as heck not getting me, and so I think it's a generational shift, and culture is designed by probably 18-year-olds pretty much define our culture. But as this generation is getting older and older, it's going to be more pervasive. But voting skews the other way. Older people still vote in disproportionately large numbers because they have a real stake in the system. They're not living on somebody else's, on their parents' dime. And so you're still going to have to communicate with them the way they want to be communicated with. And maybe that's by mail, by phone, in person, at town halls. It's a lot less about figuring out what's the silver bullet. And it's more about, talking to every audience the way they want you to talk to them.
Right. Well, I mean, definitely we saw a change in Donald Trump's this last campaign, thanks to Barron, thanks to some good friends who were on the inside were telling, because I was like, how do I get him on my show? And they was like, dude, if Barron likes you, he can get you can have him. But I mean, we definitely saw him get on a number of and he didn't have to have a studio rebuilt to replicate. Yeah. He was in one. I mean, he went there, whether it be Joe Rogan or who it is, Andrew Schultz or whoever. That definitely made a big impact, and we saw his numbers go up with that. So seems they got the message this time to tap into that market.
And it's interesting because I would not have thought the podcast is the mechanism to communicate politics to, say, the 18 to 24-year-old male. It wouldn't have occurred to me that that's the right way to go. I would have probably been, this is why I'm a lawyer, not a consultant. I would have thought, hey, let's just advertise on X and whatever. And, but 18 to 24-year-olds that are in that orbit were saying, no, this is what they're actually doing. They're listening to this. This is how they're consuming content and information, because they don't trust legacy media. They think it's BS. And he just went on and was straight with people, told them what he thinks, and the authenticity of that and the way they want to hear it and the channels they want to listen to blew my mind. But it was brilliant. It was really brilliant strategy. And I won't say not doing Joe Rogan cost Kamala the election. She was terrible to begin with, but man, did that ever just hurt them needlessly.
Yeah, I would agree. Not having he kind of went unopposed. She never, except for one or a couple that were very channeled and catered to, he was pretty much unopposed out there on there talking to the young people of America. And I think that's what we saw the result. But someone else that's very in tune with the young people and likes to think they're hip, well, the whole squad, right? Let's just talk, the whole squad thinks that. And you guys went after a lot of them, but most recently, Shaun, you guys have filed this I don't know what you call an injunction. I'm not sure. I'll let you. I'm not. Dan could even clarify, but this thing against Jasmine Crockett for some of the stuff that she is doing, but more importantly, potentially how she is potentially intimidating voters in elections and some potential election interference. Shaun, can you kind of go in a little bit about what you guys filed that yesterday and what you're hoping to get out of that.
Well, we filed some complaints with the FEC, which is another one of the great things we do at Coolidge Reagan. We file complaints and opinion requests to Federal Election Commission, and in this case, we also included the Congressional Ethics Committee, because we believe that this is way beyond the House ethics. This kind of public statement encouraging hostility and possibly political violence. So we filed a series of complaints, which are just going to start a process to hopefully review what happened, and because we believe we need to find the limit. I mean, we don't want to set a dangerous precedent. Where is the line in terms of this? The old analogy, we love freedom of speech, especially free political speech. That's our core objective. But you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. Where is the line on all this speech? And we think a lot of what went on in these videos is way beyond it.
Yeah, we just showed one. You're right. People mistake the First Amendment freedom of speech. It depends on what they care about or the day, but some will chalk it up to they can say and do whatever they want, right? Which is not how the founders intended for it, right? It was meant for you to have, civil discourse and to be able to talk freely without persecution by your government and talk against your government, if so be it. But like you said, you can't say fire in a movie theater. You can't get up on a plane and run up down and say you got a bomb, right? There's a lot of things you can't do. It's not carte blanche, but we just showed the clip. Rob, you could show it again, but I mean that's the one that kind of came out, right? Jasmine Crockett, that on her X or on her social medias of a stick figure of AOC and her beating up Republicans. It's amazing, and I guess maybe they're following the lead of Maxine Waters and so many others that and even back in the first Trump administration when, they were openly encouraging people to disrupt people in this campaign and conservatives in restaurants and do this and chase them and things like that. I mean, you see that and I mean, it seems simple, but I mean, Dan, that still constitutes intimidation, right? That still constitutes. Yeah.
So I will tell you something really crazy. According to the Biden Department of Justice, in a statement of interest they filed in a case in New Hampshire last year, sending a text message to primary voters in New Hampshire that, don't waste your vote in the Democratic primary, save it for November, which is what the Democratic Party was saying itself, constituted voter intimidation under the Voting Rights Act. I think that's completely insane, because the Voting Rights Act actually says that if you, government person, stand outside a polling place with a baseball bat, or you threaten or you scare, you intimidate people from voting, then that's illegal and the government should prosecute you. And what Jasmine Crockett has done in that video is just that. And by the way, you lose the effect because it's a really sick video. The stick figure of the Republican on the ground is moaning and begging for them to stop and in pain. And it's just awful. And so what they're doing with that is saying, hey, we are going to beat you up for being Republican. We are going to stop you from voting. So under the old DOJ model, which is nonsense, but they should certainly be acting on this. And under the actual law, the government should take interest in this, and they should do it in two ways. The Department of Justice should absolutely investigate Jasmine Crockett for this and other acts of calls to violence and harassment of people based on their political preferences and for voting. It is illegal. It would be illegal to do it. Wear a white hood outside a polling place in Selma, Alabama. It's sure as hell illegal to threaten to beat people up for voting. And at the same time, the Office of Congressional Ethics should look at this behavior, her campaign finance behavior, and the way in which she is purporting or carrying herself and threatening Elon Musk, threatening Donald Trump, calling for people to attack Teslas. By the way, she calls for people to go after Teslas. What happened? People are beating up on Teslas and setting them on fire. And so I think the Office of Congressional Ethics should hold her accountable for this kind of behavior, because if they don't hold themselves accountable, nothing is going to change. But since I don't really trust Congress to police itself all that much, That's where we also filed this DOJ complaint and the FEC complaint. We went for the trifecta.
Okay, so what is a DOJ complaint? Is it just you as a foundation or as a citizen saying, "Hey DOJ, we think this is violating a law"? I'm not sure how that works. Is it just
Pretty much? I mean, it's an 8-page legal memo. It's fairly well written and researched, of course, but basically we're saying she put out this video. She published it. She promoted it on our website. She is basically owning the words because she did so. And in it, she is saying that, hey, I apologize if you hear my dogs in the background. She is basically threatening to attack people for being Republican. She's calling for violence against Republicans, against Republican voters. And it is clearly illegal under the Voting Rights Act, both under the real law and the make-believe Democratic version of the law. And so holding her accountable is critical at the DOJ for this wanton act of political intimidation and calls to violence. Now, separately, we have the FEC complaint. And, we do a lot of FEC complaints. And somebody, the other day was like, well, why do you guys bother? Like, it's the FEC. What do they really do? I just want to remind folks that the only time that Hillary Clinton was ever held accountable for anything was the 6-figure FEC fine that she had to pay and the DNC for illegally funding the Steele dossier. And that's because Coolidge Reagan Foundation filed the complaint and called her out on it. So this stuff works. It matters. It's boring as hell and it's nerdy, but it gets results. And so we filed an FEC complaint against Jasmine Crockett. And you may have heard about this from other people talking politics, but there's this issue with Act Blue. Act Blue is this 20-year-old Democratic fundraising website platform. We have one on the right. It's called WinRed. They operate a little differently. What Act Blue did for decades is it trained young Democratic voters to donate $1. That's it. That's basically what we're doing. Donate $1, donate 5, 10, and so on. And it got people giving lots of small dollar contributions. It raised a generation of these donors. But what we noticed over the last couple of cycles, and there's been a lot of reporting on this, Ken Paxton talked about, this, other attorney generals and in Congress are talking as well, is that it seems like Act Blue has allowed what we call smurfing to occur, where in this particular case, a 73-year-old retiree in Plano, Texas, outside of Crockett's district, is reported to have given something like 60 contributions to Jasmine Crockett, and at like $5 here, $10 here, very small money, over and over and over again. And in fact, according to these records, he's given over 2,500 contributions, over $21,000 in change to Act Blue. But when they went and talked to this guy about it, his wife's like, no, we never gave this money. What are you, nuts? And so we're seeing a lot of this. Individual donors are being reported as having given very small amounts of money, but into many, many, many times, like dozens, hundreds, thousands of times in amounts that really total huge sums. And then when you go and actually track some of these people down, there's no way a guy in a trailer park is giving a $500,000 a year in political contributions,
right,
to every Democrat under the sun. So somehow money is flowing to these campaigns. It's not this guy's money, but it says it's his money. And Act Blue has to report it. By the way, Act Blue asked to change the law to not have to report these, what they call conduit contributions, probably exactly for this reason. And so basically, Jasmine Crockett has taken money that is from somebody, we don't know who, we don't know how, not the guy that she's reporting, not the guy who they're alleging is using it. And that's illegal. It's a contribution in the name of another, with the funds of another, probably from an impermissible or source, excessive corporate or foreign money. And it's hard to say whether or not she knows she's doing it, but it's very easy to know that Act Blue has tens of millions of dollars of these sorts of suspicious transactions. And I, for one, am just dying for somebody with subpoena power to go after Act Blue. And maybe that's the FEC, because you've got a pretty clear case here for the FEC to say, well, we have legally reason to believe the law was violated because they're saying they didn't give the money. And so they can open an investigation and actually just follow the money.
Yeah.
And that's why we did that complaint. So it's interesting. You've got a whole bunch of different things that she's done wrong. I didn't set out to do 3. We just kind of like, well, there's so much going on here. She's done so many stupid, awful, bad things, and they're all different agencies. We just got to do 3 complaints.
Yeah. I mean, I can see, right. It's,
by the way, I'm sorry, I also want to file one with the EPA about our hairspray, but they told me that wouldn't be that's no longer legal anymore. So
it's interesting, right? Because the small donations stay below the radar, right? And
yeah.
but then a lot of them, right, it's death by 1,000 cuts, and they don't get the attention. But like you said, one, it's easy to do identity theft. I don't know how ActBlue verifies someone who they are. If they just write the name in, well, that's but obviously people get their identity stolen all the time, and I doubt stealing identity to go on ActBlue. They're probably just using a name and an address you can get off of anywhere and say I'm this person, and even if the credit card. But that is something that is, there's obviously campaign contribution limits from individuals, from corporations, so on and so forth, especially individuals that have to be noted and recorded. Mm-hmm. So that definitely seems like a way to, for lack of a better term, money launder campaign contributions. I mean, is that the right way to put it? It seems like it is.
It certainly is. And so I've talked about this a little bit in other environments, but it's kind of, so here's what happened. Here's why they got caught. Basically, if you were doing this at an industrial level that it looks like they did, you're not, the donor types in their information, but you don't actually have to do that. You could, with a spreadsheet that says www.actblue.com/candidate name, get every single candidate in ActBlue, basically one spreadsheet, all their names, and then you assign, you have another spreadsheet of all these different donors. And what's amazing is it looks like there's about one per zip code, one per postal zip code all around the country, but only one, which I thought was pretty cool. And so you write an algorithm, click link, enter information from here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in small amount. And then what do they do for the money? Well, they have to enter a credit card. So you can get what are corporate card style payment cards. And basically you have one account, you get, dozens of different account numbers, and you literally generate them. There's no physical card. Companies use this to better manage and control expenditures for individual things in complex financial systems. It's not that uncommon. And so you've got this system where it's this tab, this donor, this credit card information, and you just run this algorithm and it just loads all the data up. And what ActBlue does not do is it doesn't ask for the CVV number, the security code on the back of the card, which would require having an additional piece of information that is not easily added to that spreadsheet, because you can't export both sets of data from these platforms. You actually physically have to look at the card to at least once go through all these different cards. And the best part is, if this is what actually happened, the reason they got caught is that they did it through ActBlue because it's efficient and it's easy to do. But ActBlue, by law, must report every contribution, whether it's $1. Normally, you don't report a contribution unless the donor aggregates over $200. So, Mr. Best down in Plano, whose name was being used for these contributions, he probably would have aggregated anyway, but way down the road. And so rather than, what they did was they used the ActBlue system rather than have to go to every candidate's website and get the candidate version of the donation page. Many, they don't even have it anymore. They just use ActBlue now. So they've killed all of this private ecosystem of businesses that used to process cards. It's all just ActBlue. And so they basically got caught because they were too lazy to go site by site and find a more complicated coding solution. So that to me is the most likely way that this has occurred. And all you need is a giant pot of money in one bank account that all these cards are connected to one account, one bank account where all the money is. And where did that money come from? Who put it there? Right. And ActBlue doesn't want to know. And by the way, 20 of their executives resigned all of a sudden. They're willfully blind. Yeah. And the candidates, they don't bother to ask questions. Honestly, I don't know a candidate that ever looked at an FEC report personally, probably. And so it's a really good system to move huge amounts of money in.
On small amount, keep it on the radar. And I think Pam Bondi or the DOJ or maybe someone's looking into this, right?
Yes.
It seemed, I thought I saw something file, and then there was like, well, all these executives just left. So what if coincidence? So
I'm aware that, I've sent information to DOJ on this. And so I'm aware DOJ is at least interested in this. I know members of Congress are openly talking about it. I don't think there's going to be a huge problem finding the will to go after this. I will tell you, it wasn't that long ago. What was it? 2018. For another client, I basically figured out that Hillary Clinton was laundering $86 million through her 2016 campaign. And what they did was they violated, and funny, they used McCutcheon's case, the McCutcheon v. FEC case that struck aggregate limits, to do these super joint fundraising committees, which are great. Every presidential campaign does it now. And they basically had all the money go to one bank account, to one committee, the JFC. And then that committee sends all equal amounts to every one of these 40 state parties. And then those 40 state parties send that amount of money back to the Democratic National Committee. And every one of these transactions happens on the exact same day. So literally there's just like a guy there pushing buttons. And we busted them on this because they were very obvious and clear in what they did. And the reason, and the FEC actually deadlocked, and they weren't willing to go, they weren't able to say we were right, we were wrong. They actually deadlocked. And the only reason we didn't pursue it is that apparently, the concern was that, well, Republicans may have done the same thing, in their joint fundraising committees. And, I've heard it said that Win Red works the same way that Act Blue does. That may or may not be true, though I don't think Win Red is involved in this kind of mass scamming. But, there's a real concern that if you start going after one of these, the Democrats will just literally file the exact same complaint that you will, and they did this to me, file the same complaint against the Republicans. And so it gets very dicey if you're not, sometimes.
Hopefully the Republicans have more ethics and are a little bit more above balls. Right. But Shaun, I want to come back to your question. So this was against her on, for example, like that diagram. But, she also just recently made some kind of threats against Ted Cruz, right? Senator Ted Cruz. I mean, was that part of your complaint, or was that do you know if that was filed by anyone else? Because I know she made some comments, kind of threatening comments, if you would, of violence against him.
We did mention that in one of the complaints. I don't remember exactly how, but there are several scenarios in there.
Yeah, because it's a pattern, right? It seems to be a pattern. And then when we talk about Teslas, I know she was on there touting on socials that it's her birthday or is her birthday or whatever, and she just hopes for her birthday that people try to bring Elon Musk and Tesla down and all that kind of stuff. And then you got this guy today. Luckily, they busted this guy in Vegas for torching and vandalizing the Teslas at the dealership that everyone saw, and the FBI is now filing federal charges. Shaun, do you think is that what it's going to have to take to maybe get people not to listen to loudmouth, violence inciting politicians like this and think, I may be in trouble because now they're actually holding people accountable?
Well, if we're kind of at a crossroads, I'm not sure which direction we're going to go. So it's either going to get better or probably worse. And, there is a pattern across not just Crockett, but multiple campaigns. But yeah, you're exactly right. It's back to accountability. And will any of these agencies or the Congress move in an accountability direction? I can't really answer that one yet. We certainly hope they do. And because, it's reaching a serious point, we need to do something different, in my view.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen videos. You guys see the people. I saw one the other day of someone just, people are just driving around their Tesla that they bought 2017, 2018, whatever. And one was in a New Orleans, I think, Mardi Gras parade, and people came up and injured the lady in the car because the windows were down. They're keying cars. I saw one the other day of a lady got out of her Toyota Highlander or whatever and just keyed a Tesla. All this kind of stuff, spray painting on them. It's amazing, isn't it, that how fast Teslas go from being so popular on the left, like Priuses and everything else that's EV, to now, if you're driving one, you're practically the Antichrist to the left for investing into trying to keep the world green, and that they believe that. Is there no limits to Shaun, in your thoughts, what you've seen? You've been involved around the political space a long time. Do they have any morals? Is there anything that they really hold valuable, or is it all just eyewash and just whatever's popular for them?
Well, they hold value. The value is having control of the system. Okay, having control of the government. That's the one value they have. So when you take that away, which has happened recently, you're seeing a large level of frustration. Look at, like with Elon, for example, it's really bad because he's rolling back or recommending. Really, he's not really doing it himself, but he's recommending reductions in government. And it seems to me that the view that government is going to do all this stuff. I mean, at this point, we've really exceeded. I mean, it's clearly like with the inflation and the financial system, you've reached the limits of what we're well beyond the limits of what the government can do. So, but the left is not. I mean, the left has to have control, and they do that through government. So, that's to me what their value is, their only value.
Yeah, I mean, I've given the nickname of Rocket Crockett to Jasmine Crockett because she has kind of put it in my head that, you know, if there was a top 10 Billboard list of just the dumbest things that someone on the left has said, I felt like she has now shot her way to the top and taken the first place away from Hillary, away from AOC, away from definitely Maxine Waters. You know, you could one after another. Cori Bush, she shot right to the top, and she seems the face and voice of the Democratic Party right now. But I don't think many on the right are too upset about that. I think most are doing it. And here's a great example. Rob's about to show.
You know, we got Governor Hot Wheels down there. Come on now.
So obviously that got a lot of attention. You know, Governor Abbott was in decades ago, paralyzed, and you know, she referred to him as Governor Hot Wheels, and getting lots of laughs from people at her supporters, and has given a haphazard apology, if you would, and now won't even address it. I mean, they talk about decorum in Congress and on the Capitol. She is, you know, she seems to be leading the way, Dan, of no concept of that, or no concept of. I mean, Fetterman looks sharper and sounds more efficient in his Carhartt hoodie than she does.
Yeah, well, I mean, she has a stroke. I'm sure she will abandon her insanity as well. You know, it's interesting because people don't realize that, you know, we look at Congress and they act like children half the time, and it's embarrassing. And you see stuff like this and you think, why are people that way? But actually, Congress has a code of ethics, and they're bound to it by themselves, and they can be held accountable for it. We saw you know, the Rep. Green, I think also from Texas, get kicked out of the State of the Union because he refused to follow the rules. And I think that is fantastic, because until you hold people accountable for the things that we tell them you're going to be held accountable for, they're going to keep doing it. You know, I think back to early COVID when you had riot after riot after riot. And what do? We kowtow. We kneel down to them. We encourage them. Right. What we should have done is throw every one of their little asses in jail every single time. And it's, you know, environmental terrorists will commit environmental terror until you arrest them and throw them in jail. People will beat up on Teslas until they know they're going to get arrested and they're going to go to jail. And Jasmine Crockett, who, and let's face it, she's not an idiot in the truest sense, where she knows what she is doing is going to raise her money and get her votes and increase her power and influence in the Democratic Party, because all they have right now are young, angry, stupid people who have nowhere else to go because they're the dependent class. So she's out there saying all this horrible stuff. And until we say, hey, no, there is a standard of conduct here and you're violating it very clearly. You cannot threaten Elon Musk. That violates the rule against threatening government officials, because he is a director of Doge. And it's, you know, by the way, it also violates it doesn't exactly violate, but, you know, we have a concept in our country that against bills of attainment. It's actually, you know, one of the early things in the Declaration of Independence. And what it means is you don't try to pass laws to screw individual people. And, you know, she's saying we should. She's attacking Ted Cruz. She's attacking, you know, Governor Abbott on a very despicable and personal level. You know, I mean, that's just awful. And, you know, that conduct, in addition to the FEC violations and the voter intimidation, but that conduct, it violates the Congressional Code of Ethics that she said she was going to uphold and live by. And if they don't hold her accountable, she will never stop doing it.
Yeah, well, as I say, I call her Rocket Crockett because she is zoomed up there, and you know, she's getting all the attention. She's taking it from all the rest for it, right? Because right now we know from recent polls that you know, I think you know, from a few weeks ago, AOC by like 10% was considered the leader of the Democratic Party. Getting a lot of attention. I bet if they did that one now, many on the left would probably put Crockett up there. So they're just, you know, they go with whoever's up there. And what else we see is this we saw it years ago, right? We saw it with Obama having the beer and the beer summit, and then we saw Pocahontas try to act like she was just having a beer, and it seemed like for a while the Democrats were like, hey, I'm having a beer, I'm hanging out on one of you. We saw
let me pretend to be blue collar. That was your magical trick,
right? As Schumer, grilling raw burgers and all that kind of stuff, and it just sees right through it. But now it's F-bombs. Now it seems that the Democratic Party, I guess, the DNC meetings, seem to be, hey, if we just cuss and drop F-bombs, which Crockett's a great one at, if we just that kind of stuff, we're going to relate and people are going to like us. Shaun, in your experience in circles, do you think this is holding any water at all? Do you think this is really moving the needle with anybody?
Oh, what they're doing on the left?
Yeah, just cussing where. I mean, it doesn't matter where
it's moving the needle with their base. Certainly, I don't know that. I think as far as independents or the middle, they're probably losing more of that. So I don't. But in terms of the base, it's popular with them. That's why they're doing it. Why do you think she rises up? I'm sure the fundraising comes up too, because again, she's going a little bit further than they've gone before, and there's a lot of frustration over the loss on the left. The left is really frustrated with the losses in the election, and because again, the government is very important. The control of the government is very important. They were very nice talking when they were in control, like you're talking about. If we're going to do beer summit or whatever, of course you were canceled or you couldn't do anything, or we were shut down everywhere in terms of, industry or energy or whatever. Yeah. But they were more amicable in terms of the rhetoric. And that's just because they're out of control. They're in more ways than one. They're out of control in terms of they lost the elections, and they're out of control in terms of the behavior. And, the Congress should have a higher standard of ethics. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is you and I should have a little more free speech than maybe. I mean, we all have free speech, but there's consequences for free speech. But the Congress should have more stringent ethics than just we do maybe on, and if they're serious about maintaining some real standards, they need to take action. They need to do something.
Yeah, when you bend standards, right? So we talked about a second ago. Your Dan was mentioning about the riots in 2020 and all that kind of stuff, reaction. I've told people that people want to know how January 6th happened. The whole world, but let's just say in the country, the whole country watched it riot, burn down police stations, take over neighborhoods, and nothing happens to you. So if people want to get upset and whether they broke a window at the Capitol or just walk through the rope lines or whatever, it's like, we just saw for the last several years that you could do whatever you want. Like no one's going to take you to no one's going to arrest you. No one's going to, we saw even more, even since then, all the anti-Semitic protests and riots at these universities, and watching them all get round up and then all get released. Right. And no charges filed and that kind of stuff. So, right. Anarchy is when there's no
increase, and we saw standards of living decline. And that's part of the reason you had the change in, the massive immigration and the economic issues from overloading the financial system with all this, whatever it is, fraud, waste, and abuse. That's why you had a change in power. Basically, the machine couldn't keep itself going, and that has frustrated the left. That's why they're vicious and mean.
Yes, I think like the guy going after the Teslas or whatever, who's now being brought up at charges. We're probably going to see more charges. We saw all these illegals that are getting rounded up and shipped down to El Salvador. I mean, it's what the American people voted for, right? It's a mandate that they gave. I guess I don't know how long it's going to take for maybe some people a little bit slower, denser than others to realize. We call it the FAFO effect, but you can't just go do whatever you want and not have repercussions, right? The law of the land is the law of the land. It's going to get enforced now. And, I guess the AOCs and the Jasmine Crockett's can encourage people to be violent, but I guess, Dan, are people going to just go with that willy-nilly, or you think they may hold back now because they're like, crap, people are actually getting in trouble for this? This is,
I think the fact that you're seeing accountability is immediately going to have an effect on the number of people and the severity of this. You're not going to do dumb things. It's almost 10 years now since Donald Trump came down the gold escalator and declared his candidacy. And for 10 years, Donald Trump has been literal Hitler to the left. They have raised an entire generation of their people on hatred and violence towards one person. And it's no shock that, they've lost control of their brown shirts here. And the only way to reconnect with this radicalized audience is to be radical, to swear and to be profane and to say the most outrageous thing, because that's how you get money and volunteers and attention and control this electorate. And that's all they care about. Shaun's right. It's messaging and it's how do they get control. But when you start seeing what we're finally seeing now after years, people are getting in trouble. People are held accountable for their actions. It is amazing. Bad people stop doing bad things. Moderately bad people definitely stop doing it. But if you know you're going to get arrested, you're going to get in trouble for this, there's going to be repercussions, all of these little bratty kids are going to stop doing this stuff. And I'm going to give you a fun example. You may have heard of the Columbia doxing trucks, right? Have you heard of these guys?
Yeah.
So that's a group called Accuracy Media. I'm on their board. I love it. It's another fun group I work with. And what they've done is basically, hey, this person signed this hateful anti-Semitic letter and did all this terrible stuff. Here's his name, blah, blah, blah. And, it isn't really doxing. You don't reveal any private information at all. But the fact that their names are being made public, they're on websites. By the way, AIM is now the largest owner of domains in the world because it bought every domain for every one of these little monsters. These kids shut up. Look, they may still be anti-Semites, but they're in the closet and they're not spewing their violence and they're not attacking. Now you just have the foreign radicals from Hamas that Biden brought over to study at our schools to deal with. But it has had a real effect because you held them accountable and they stopped. And I think the more we do that throughout our society, Coolidge Reagan does it with elected officials. You've got organizations that do it publicly. Twitter is great for this. The more you hold people accountable for bad conduct, the less you're going to have that bad conduct. There was a line in some movie or show, and it's a mock debate. And the question is, how many dead Americans is it worth? How many dead Americans is too much before we start building the wall? How many dead Americans will it take? And, the Democratic character is like, well, we have to consider all the factors and the violence. And the Republican character is like, no, 0. That's the number of dead Americans that is acceptable to me. And if you want to achieve 0, you actually have to try to achieve it. You have to hold everyone accountable every single time for every bad act. And when you do that, all of this stops. It started because we stopped holding people accountable, and it will stop when we start holding them accountable.
Right. And, look, you talked about the Win Red. I hope that they are not doing it, but if they are doing things that are, along the same lines as Act Blue, I hope they either change or someone holds them accountable, right? We want both sides. We don't want, Republican elected representatives to get away with stuff that are the law.
There's no evidence, by the way, that
right.
they are. I don't want to throw them under the bus. I'm just saying they're going to get a retaliatory complaint. So when we did the Hillary complaint, the left, they literally cut my complaint word for word and pasted and filed it to the FEC and just changed, Act Blue to Win Red. And so they file retaliatory complaints very blatantly, as a threat. So hey, we'll go after you. They probably did nothing wrong. Win Red's problem is totally different. They got a whole different set of problems over there, and that's just process and email volume.
Yeah, I just hope they got their stuff tightened up. Their books are good, all that stuff, so they can be like, sure, come look at whatever you want, right? And be above it. And but people make mistakes. There's no job in this world that it puts anyone above the law, and everyone wants them held accountable. I mean, there are Republicans and Democrats that are losing jobs, or there are companies that are losing contracts because of Doge.
Yeah.
Right? Of which we should all be glad for. And that's one thing that gets me is that's our money. The government doesn't have money. The government has people's money.
Well, it's not our money. It's China's money that our grandkids are going to still be paying back.
So
but you already got all our money.
We should really care about what is being spent on, right?
Yeah.
And whether it's, gay shrimp in Cuba or whatever it's going to be, we should care that they're spending the money the right way and they're not spending money in excess software licenses, or they're not spending it on dumb things for overseas that aren't betterment for the country. But, Shaun, it just gets me obviously I'm looking through a number of things on your guys' site that you guys have filed about. and I can see where you guys, sit on things, but, how is it that, what do we have to do to educate the people to like just take a pause from listening to the MSNBC, CNNs or whatever, and sit there and go, do you realize like you may be a young person who hasn't filed taxes for 3 or 4 years, only been in the workplace for a couple of years, but do you realize that money that you're giving away, that you're starting to work hard at, is going for all this dumb stuff? What does it take to get them to realize, to apply common sense, I guess?
Well, I think you're actually doing it, and it started happening. You got to do more great shows like this one, and that is part of the reason that part of what's happened. There is some big progress here in terms of a lot of what happened in Trump 1 was exposure, okay? Because if you went back to previously before Trump, a lot of people did not believe this stuff, and you were talking about what the limits are of what the Democrats are willing to do. Well, everybody thought that the ethics and the standards of, say, Congress was a lot higher than we found out. It's been exposed over the past few years, and the cancel culture actually, now that that's coming off, it helped people realize how bad it really, is. And so the next step is what Dan's talking about, is now that we all know, or a lot of people know, and shows like yours are informing us, what are we going to do to change? Or, we're, like I said earlier, we're kind of at a crossroads. We need to either get better or we're going to get worse. I'm still thinking we're going to get better. So, and another thing on the financial side, though, if we're putting all this money into the government, it needs to allow us to. You can work on the supply side or the production side. A lot of what Trump's been talking about, but in terms of energy, if the government is going to be taking in lots and lots of money, it shouldn't be stopping the producers from producing. We have a lot of things in the country that could be making a lot of money if they were allowed to run. So that was a big problem with the Democrats, is they regulated everything. They squeezed everything so hard that they couldn't financially feed the machine. So it's not just about how they're spending the tax dollars, but how can we increase a lot of the tax money going in, other than raising rates on people. In other words, how we need to increase the economic base, so it by a large amount. And that was a huge problem with the Democrats. They're
Well, we saw
regulating energy out of, we need to go with energy because we have a lot of it, and that will generate enough money to pay off the debt, for example. You see what I'm saying? You can work on the other side. I just want to make that point.
It's a great one, right? Because we saw that in Trump's first administration, where I forgot what it was, something like every new regulation brought forward, he required 5 or 10 to be gotten rid of. And he regulated a lot, allowing businesses, allowing innovation and companies to really flourish, right? And we saw it recently with the fires that happened in California, where he went out there and stopped turned off a whole bunch of federal regulations and pushed California to turn off a whole bunch of building regulations to allow people to start building sooner, versus through all the process of getting permits and this and that. Those things are, if they're causing us to build safer and better houses and so on, that's one thing. But if they're just permits to have permits to feed local and state and economies, you just got to turn that stuff off to allow people to build and get their lives back. I think we're seeing it now, right? I think he's continued that mantra of deregulation, and I think it's another contributor to the economy, like you said, for sure.
Yeah, we need to limit the congressional speaking and not limit the producers. Okay, that's what I'm saying.
Yep. Yeah. Well, we can do that by quit making all these hearings public and just keep them closed door hearings, because if they don't get their 5 minutes to just rant about something that the topic is about, I guarantee you those committee and subcommittee hearings will start going a lot faster. Those cameras are the worst thing we got. I've always said they should treat them like courtrooms. Let someone in there with a good artist do some sketches and to let them report on it after, but take the damn cameras away from the Cory Bookers and the Klobuchars and all them that just want to go on tyrants, or even Crockett, right? She's great at doing that too. They get that mic and they just don't shut up. Yeah. So were you gonna say something, Dan?
Well, it was what you said about how do we change the young people's perspective because it's their dollars now that they're working. And I was thinking about this is that growing up isn't the same now as it was when I was 25 years ago when I was getting out of the house and get out of college and go in the work world. Parents financially support their children much more. You're either living at home after high school or college. When you get your first job, you're getting financial support from your parents, for years as a young adult, maybe in your apartment. And a lot of that, part of that has to do with the cost of housing is just astronomical and bad because government regulations have made it thus. But I don't, like you start getting a paycheck. Yeah, it hurts to see that money coming out from the government, but you still got your parents' subsidy going on. And so I think you really start to learn to be sort of independent and caring about this when you're on your own. You're truly on your own. And like you sink or swim on your own feet. And more importantly, when you're responsible for somebody else. I got way more conservative as an individual when I got married, and way more when I started having kids and dogs. Mostly the dogs, most of the kids. And to me, it's like, I was paying taxes about like I just sort of understood that's the system. But then it's like I have to decide between do I buy food for my kid or do I pay taxes to the government? Like that changes people's perspective. And so I think it's weird, but like we got to get housing prices down. We got to let kids get out of the house, be independent, not feel like they're living in a college dorm where everything is regulated and mom and dad are sending them care packages. Get people faster and further on the road to personal independence, personal responsibility, the great mantra of the GOP. And as they do, they're going to start caring a lot more about what the heck the government is doing with their money.
Yeah. That's it. Hopefully this exposes some. Look, we would not have known about the Twitter files or any of that had Elon not spent $44 billion on Twitter, right? We would not have known how deep the deep state is if Hillary had won in 2016. All that would have been buried.
Yeah.
Sunlight is the best disinfectant. And, the more this stuff comes out, the stuff that you guys highlight in this complaint, and get people to pay attention to, like this 73-year-old person making all these donations. I mean, this is awesome work you guys are doing because because you're not doing it, you're not getting anything out of this except for the betterment of our country, and I think that's very admirable. I just wanted to make sure I said that, but we did have one question real quick as we get ready to wrap up. It came from Rob actually about Elizabeth Warren and others that were putting links up to make donations to them, but they were taking them right to Act Blue. Is that in your complaint at all that it's doing?
Well, no, and actually people don't realize this. So Act Blue is a political action committee that is a conduit. It takes money in and it forwards it on. That's its function. WinRed's the same. It's also a processing platform in that, you put your credit card information in and it goes on. So with Act Blue actually has a separate arm that is a nonprofit arm that only does 501c3s and charitable organizations, obviously on the left. And so on the one hand, it is not unreasonable that Act Blue was processing contributions for the Democrats are driving it, contributions to Act Blue for legitimate charities. Now, whether the end result is going to a legitimate charity is a whole nother story. And I think you got to start looking at the fine print and the disclaimers. Like again, not to pick on WinRed, but they have a standardized disclaimer. And when you have like multiple candidates doing stuff, it's like 8 pages long and it's nonsense. It doesn't mean anything. It just sort of got muddled in there. But the Democrats, when they send your charitable contributions to Act Blue, it should say it's actually going to this organization, and Act Blue is just the processor, like Visa or MasterCard or whatever the terminal at the stores. Having said that, I don't know that every one of these things was legitimate because the Democrats, they're desperate for raising money too, and so they could say, "Hey, help me make a difference in California," and then it's a campaign contribution. So the important thing is, if I don't think anybody in your audience is donating to the Democrats, but if you're going to donate to any candidate, look at the disclaimer to see exactly who your money is going to.
Yeah, good public service announcement there. That's a good one. Shaun, so you guys have filed this. You filed 3 actually. Is there any kind of timeline? And maybe Dan, if you better answer, you got either one. But is there when should you expect something like that? Like, it takes a few weeks. Is it never ending? Is there kind of an idea of when you should expect to hear something back or anything at all?
In general, these things are kind of slow. So my guess is months.
Okay.
So OCE, the Office of Congressional Ethics, and the DOJ are black boxes. They're not going to tell you anything, because if they open an investigation, they're not allowed to talk about it. And if they're not opening an investigation, they don't want to tell you that. The FEC is a little different. Within 10 days, they're going to send us a letter and tell us whether they've accepted the complaint or not, whether they're opening a process. And we should, or 10 or 15 days. And then 10 days. And then 15 days after that, Crockett gets to respond. Now, we won't see her response unless she makes it public. They never make these things public. And then the FEC has our complaint, her response, does an independent investigation analysis in a big black box. And eventually they will rule on the complaint one way or the other. And that's the first time the general public will know. And the reason is because members of Congress didn't want to have a system where anybody could go and file a complaint and it would all be public and the whole process would be public. They knew it is a political weapon if it could be used against them. But it's also potentially embarrassing when they do bad stuff. Duncan Hunter famously bought an airplane ticket for his bunny rabbit one time. Like, I don't know why the hell you would do that, but he did. And I guess for the cage. And you don't want to have a complaint about that public. You want to be able to sort of, what is your defense? Is my emotional support bunny rabbit. And, I felt, I named him George and I loved him and I petted him. By the way, it's an old Warner Brothers bit I was doing there, but of the abominable snowman. But you don't want this stuff in the public. And so it's out there. Now, so 10 days out, they'll tell us that they're opening an investigation. 15 days later, she'll do a response. They might extend it for 30, and then they'll sit on it for however long they want. After 120 days, though, if we have the resources to do it, we could actually sue the FEC to force them to rule on this case. And what's fun is when we've done this, the FEC gets smart. We used to be able to get away with this, and now they're like, oh, they're suing us. We're going to rule on it before we have to respond. And so they rush through the process and actually give you an answer. And then after that, you can still sue them if they gave you the wrong answer. But it's a great process, but it's really, really slow unless you've got, the best case scenario is you've got enough money to litigate it and speed it along and then litigate it again. And so, yeah.
So do you guys
$250 million? So
two things. One, is there an appeal process if they rule against you? And is there if at 10 days they say, no, we're not going to do anything about it, can you appeal it anywhere else?
Yes, you appeal it into the district court.
Yeah, exactly. You have automatic right of appeal. I will tell you, I've never had an FEC complaint we filed not get accepted. I mean, we're lawyers. We're good at our jobs. We care about this work. We're very thorough. Our reputations matter to us professionally. So I have not yet had any of them get booted. And I've had complaints about, really small things. There was another Random Act Blue thing, but disclaimers in Act Blue being wrong. And, it would be easy to say, oh, this isn't a big deal. No, they accepted it. They ruled on it. They said, yeah, you know what? It was probably wrong, but who cares? They'll actually, they have a thing called prosecutorial discretion, which is, we think they did a bad thing, but we don't care enough. So,
right.
But then you can sue.
So this costs money. Yeah.
Yes.
Out of your pocket? Do you get donations? Do you do fundraising? Or did you guys just
all of the above?
Shaun, to his credit, is our largest donor. I think I'm pretty much number two. We probably have a couple other small donors. We also do legal defense funds for various individuals. We've done them for Libs of TikTok, for the fraternity guys who were getting, in trouble with the flag last year. Bunch of fun stuff. Some of the people that were at the campus of the Capitol, but didn't go in and were being unfairly persecuted, we've helped raise money for them as well. And so we do a lot of different things, but mostly it's, go to the website and donate if you can. And, we hope to find, supporters so we can bring these cases.
All right. So you can find that. We've been scrolling at CoolidgeReagan.org. And I'm assuming you'll keep updates as the 10-day thing, the 15-day, and all as the updates filing happens. You guys are going to keep that update on there so people that want to follow along.
Yeah, absolutely. It's we actually have a separate page for Jasmine Crockett. It's /Crockett on the end, but we'll move it to the home because there's 3 different complaints there. Right. But we're definitely going to be trying to update it as we go along and, talking about it wherever we can. I mean, that's the worst thing that you can do is not pursue this stuff. We went after Cori Bush. It was a lot of work. There was multiple layers of complaints, and you know what? She's gone. And that, that's what we're here to do is, doggedly chase the bad guys down so they're gone.
Are you going after any elected reps that marry their brothers to get them into the country?
Well, we have indeed, I believe, filed. we filed a complaint. Actually, I don't remember if it was Coolidge Reagan or one of my other clients, but we have filed complaints about that. We did Rashida Tlaib, we did Ilhan Omar, we went after Cori Bush very successfully. I have long gone after AOC. I actually did the Stop the AOC pact, trying to get rid of her. It's tough finding a decent Republican candidate in that district, as it turns out.
Yeah.
And so we are, we will go after every single, bad guy that we have the resources to go after, because amazingly, they suck at this. They just break the rules constantly. They, just today we're talking about, we want to do a complaint against AOC because she hired an illegal alien in her campaign. And it's an easy FEC violation, but we have to do this work, and it's time and it's money that we have to pay lawyers for. So It is a very frustrating thing to want to do good work and get stuffed. I feel like Mother Teresa. No, I'm kidding. That's a total thing to say.
Exactly the way I was looking at you as. Yeah. Hey, as we wrap up, Dan, I'll start with you, and then Shaun will close out. But anything you want to let our listeners and viewers know? Any other just things you're working on, or you just want to, or just any topics you want to make sure that they're aware of, or they study, or they read into?
I would just say keep engaged. One of the greatest thing that the Tea Party movement did back in 9 and 10 was it radically increased the tempo of engagement with people. Usually politics is sleepy business. You do some mail, you do some calls, maybe some emails, but that was it. Now politics is, it's our life. And yeah, sometimes it's frustrating. I get all the same annoying emails and the same annoying phone calls and the same annoying text messages as everybody else, but they're important to the system. And it's important that if you care about this country, find the pieces of it that you want to fight for and fight with them, whether it's candidates for office at the state or federal level, whether it's outside organizations, find the guys that speak for you and get behind them, because it's grassroots support that ultimately wins. All the money in the world did not get Hillary Clinton elected. It did not get Kamala Harris elected. Individual voters and individual political action is what it takes.
Solid. Great advice for sure. Shaun, anything from you, anything you just want to share with our viewers and listeners?
Well, Coolidge Reagan has been changing. We've done some great projects related to First Amendment, and it's like Dan said, at times it seems frustrating, but you just have to keep going. For example, the Supreme Court case that we won that resulted in massive changes to fundraising. We started off at the FEC and we lost 6-0. Okay, even the Republicans voted against us. So you were asking about appealing. Yeah, we appealed, and it took a long time, and it's a slow grind. But it's reached the point now where you can't ignore politics anymore, because they're trying to invade every aspect of your life. I wish it wasn't that way, but and we have to understand that some of these things that we're trying to change, it is going to take time, and we have to be patient and consistent.
Awesome. Okay, it's everything. Nothing moves fast in the government except Elon Musk right now and Donald Trump.
I love that, man.
They are the fastest moving things in the government. That's why it's making everyone's head spin left, right, center. Hey, thank you guys so much for coming on, Shaun and Dan. What you're doing is great. I mean, I knew nothing about the Coolidge Reagan Foundation before today, and I've been on there looking. I looked at the Crockett site. I mean, this is grassroots right here, right? It's just, you guys are just, again, it's a great service. You feel passionate about this. You feel passionate about our country and how this country was built. I can see it. And, all you're trying to do is, you're not telling people you're not making threats. You're not creating websites to harass people. You're just trying to hold them to the letter of the law. And I think that's pretty awesome. So again, thank you guys so much for doing this. And thank you for sure for coming on tonight.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
All right.
Good night.